It's a big day for nuclear energy, isn't it?
It is, yes. We've been waiting for this, we've been expecting it, but very definitely this is the second of the new generation of plants. We really need to do 5 of these to be making a big deal.
But these are quite old-fashioned plants still.
Well, they are...
These are not the new modular ones that have been
No, that's right. These are traditional big nuclear plants.
Yeah.
There are several of these now. It's called EPR, this particular design. It's been built in China, it's been built in Finland, it's been built in France, and now in the United Kingdom. So it's already being built at Hinkley Point, and the idea is, in effect, you move the kit, having just freshly made the Hinkley Point one, in an orderly fashion up to Sizewell and make considerable savings rather than having to start again from scratch.
To what extent in this, and you've made the point that much of this is going to be built in China, which many of us have reservations about. What will the level of Chinese investment be in Sizewell C, or is this government stake effectively pushing them out?
Well, Hinkley C was 80% EDF, the French company, which is now to be renationalised, although it was always 80% state-owned, and 20% was the Chinese, through the Chinese Development Corporation. The government has said it will take a 20% financial stake in Sizewell C. So all else being equal, it's a fairly orderly replacement of Chinese investment with British money.
Which politically is likely to be quite popular within the Conservative Party. Perhaps that's why it's timed this way. What can we expect next in terms of nuclear announcements?
So we have the potential for a site in North Wales at a site called Wilver. We have a potential on the Thames Estuary at a place called Bradwell, which used to have one of the very first stations. That was to have been a Chinese station. That's very unlikely to go that way. But of course, it could well be a site for once this design is tried and tested, and we're very much moving in that direction. And then beyond that, there are sites in Lancashire, there are sites at Hartlepool, which could take new nuclear stations. And we need to, of course, to replace the existing stations, most of which will be at the end of their lives by the end of this decade. So it's not just a matter of new build, which we need anyway, but also replacing the existing capacity.
Can anyone explain to me why at Dungeness in Kent, where construction on the A plant began in 1961, where there is a large, skilled workforce, a local population strongly in favour of Dungeness C being developed, it's not happening.
Yeah, it was the Environment Agency on there which looked at all the sites in detail, and Dungeness was the one where they felt the amount of unique geology and flora down there, vegetable life down there, just really meant that you wouldn't go there first. It may well be appropriate for a smaller reactor, and of course, alongside the big programme, we need to find sites for smaller reactors. But given that there are other sites available, I think the feeling was that Dungeness should be at the end of the queue.
OK. And finally, what's happening around the rest of Europe with nuclear? We know the Germans stopped all nuclear, but now they're talking perhaps about going back to it. The French have had a huge stock of nuclear power stations, but getting very, very old, as I understand. What's the picture across Europe?
Yes, I mean, the French have not invested as much as they needed to, and there's a backlog there to bring their plants back up to life. With what's called a pressurised water reactor, it can easily have a 60-year operating lifetime if it's done properly. Belgium has completely rowed back from its phase-out policy and is now talking about further life extensions, already extension to 2035. In Germany, public opinion is beginning to sway behind nuclear. It's not there yet, but there has been a very noticeable difference because they, of course, are right at the front line of the Ukrainian gas crisis. And we have other countries around it. Europe, Finland has just opened its third major nuclear station and has plans for the fourth. Totally supported by the Finnish Green Party, incidentally, who are very pragmatic and sensible.
Well, of course, it's zero carbon, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly what they have realised. To be fair, the Finnish Green Party are very, very pragmatic and sensible about these things. Sweden is a major nuclear force. We're not quite sure what's happening there. Public opinion in Sweden is pretty good. And then beyond that, we have about 30 countries worldwide which are talking about coming into nuclear power for the first time. And Belarus and Turkey are already building their first nuclear power stations. So in the course of the last 10 years, I think there's just been a transformation in the global recognition of the role that nuclear can play, both in climate change and in giving us not having to be quite as dependent as we are on fossil fuels from unfriendly regimes.